Okay, here we go. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Lynn Madera, and we're going to cover email marketing today inside of the Continuum CRM platform. And there are several topics that we're going to review. One is our functional overview, which is just going to give you a high-level look at all the features and benefits that are available in the email marketing function. And then we're really going to focus in on a few topics that, folks have reached out and told us that they would find very valuable, right? So what are some of the best practices, that we could implement while we're using this functionality? Maybe what are some of the more advanced configurations that you haven't thought of, or you just haven't gotten that far into the platform to utilize? And then look at, some of the things that some of our customers have started doing that we didn't instruct anyone to do, but they found very useful or innovative in the way that they use the platform. And then we do have a couple of new features to announce to you. So that'll probably be one of the most exciting parts of the presentation. So of course I saved that to the end. But we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll pop through the functional overview and talk to you a little bit about the features, as a whole. So in our email marketing platform, we've built in what we hope is kind of best of both worlds. So it's not a full-blown email automation marketing platform, but it does give you lots of tracking and information on the emails that you are sending out to your prospects. So whether they're mass emailed or one-off emails, we have tracking or what you might call statistics or analytics on those emails. So whether they were opened, did they bounce, are people opting out? So all that's built in to the CRM so that you don't have to go to a third-party platform to perform those functions. You have the ability to develop templates. So if there's newsletter templates or even personal templates that you would like to have at your fingertips, think of your sales counselors when they're wanting to follow up after tour or after an event, those kind of things. We can have those templated so we're not always having to create those from scratch. We also have an administrator function in there so that you can have the email templating privilege more localized. So if you do have a developed marketing group or you use an agency, then they can help establish the brand or the messaging that you want in those email templates. And then you are able to schedule those out to go at a later date. So it can be, an email that you want to send at some, one email, but it could also be a series of emails. So after a prospect has taken a certain step, think about scheduling out to them, maybe some collateral at different points along the way, or, another invitation to an event that's coming up. So there are a number of benefits to utilizing this functionality inside the platform. Okay, we just have to do a little bit of configuration and setup and make sure that your users are familiar with the function, get them trained, and then you can be off and running. So quick overview of the email tab. I know we have a lot of folks on that are already using email, but some who haven't ventured that far into the function here. So I just want to give a little high level. There is a dedicated email tab. Okay, and within that, you have the ability to save drafts, so what we might call the email in progress. These could have been based on templates. They could have been an email that you're just developing in a one-off fashion. But you don't have to complete that effort all in one sitting. You can come back and work those drafts and send them out later. We do have tracking so that you can manage bounces and opt-outs. And this is going to be something we're going to cover later on in our best practices. This can be a very important piece of this function to make sure that you're staying in touch and not losing communication with those prospects. We do have static distribution lists. We're also going to cover, a use of that today. And then we have our, what we're calling standardized email bodies, but these are our email templates, and they can be very text or kind of personally created or they can be HTML in nature so that they're graphical. Okay, so that is where you would go to manage the email environment inside of Continuum. Okay. One of the main concepts that we want to be sure all of our users and administrators understand is there are two different types of email in the system. And we refer to them as a marketing email or a standard email. And listed underneath there, under marketing email, one of the most important points is that marketing emails can be personalized. Okay, so what does that mean? So that means that we can create templates and we can embed tagging that will pull in a contact's first name, or it will pull in maybe the community or property that they're looking at, what wait list reservation settings they have, what line of service they're interested in. And so if we're wanting to create personalized emails that automatically pull in data that we've already entered into the contact and prospect records, then we want to use this marketing email. Okay, and it looks when it's sent, when it's delivered, it looks like that email, came from a counselor and it only came to me, right? Even if I email this out to 10 or 20 people, if I do some kind of mass email, it still looks like I received it individually. And it has all the opt-out functionality, etc. Now, if you just send one of our standard emails, this is more like a communication that you might send through Outlook. And if you send that to 2 or 3 people, then they're going to see each other listed on that recipient line. We don't merge in and personalize anything. So it's another way to send an email out, but it's not tracked in nature. And this is less likely a form of email that you will use to communicate with your prospects, but it might come in handy when we start thinking about static distribution lists. Okay, and we'll pull that in as we make our way through the presentation. Now, the actual act of sending emails. Okay, so we have a number of different ways that you can get an email created and sent out of the system. First and foremost, I can go to any record in the system, let's say a contact or a prospect or a referral partner, and I can use the send email option on those records, and I can pick a template and send an email out of the system. That's the most straightforward, direct way to get an email out. And typically, we think of these as being our one-off emails or emails to individuals. Then we have the ability to send mass emails, which you're typically going to pull those together, the recipient list together through a report. So you may build a report to pull all the prospects on your wait list, or build a report for everyone who attended a particular event. And that is going to pull together all those contacts so that I can have this recipient list that I can send a mass email to now. And this is the dynamic way to do it, right? So as people move on and off your wait list, the report allows you to pull what that is at any point in time and send that email out. And then you can also, from the main email tab, we can also just start an email from scratch and search through contacts and prospects and pull emails in. So this is really kind of building it ground up. I pick my recipients, I pick my template, and I pull this email together. And then one of the things we're going to look at when we get to our new feature section is I can now send emails from the events tab, right? So now I don't have to build a report to send emails to all of my contacts on an event. I can actually do it right from the event record. So that's something that we're going to cover shortly. Now, analytics or statistics for emails. Okay, so this is one of the biggest benefits that you're going to get from sending emails out of the system, right, and using our email marketing platform. You're going to get a summary of how many were sent, what was delivered, open click, so you get, how are things performing. Now I get to see, beyond the summary, I can also see the listing. So who are these contacts? Who bounced? Maybe I need to follow up with them and correct that email address or get that new email address. I can look at the open and click rate to see who's responding to my message. And then again, we do have the opt-out and the spam compliancy area so that these emails are valid as they're going out of the system. But this, with all the effort that we put into in creating the templates and learning how to send emails out of this platform, this is where you get kind of the bang for the buck, right? This is what we're looking for in the end. All right. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time walking through screens live in the system. I mean, we will pop in and out. I really wanted to get kind of to the meat of the presentation, which is maybe pointing out, well, hopefully, pointing out aspects of the system that you may not be aware of, or that could enhance your usage of the platform. Okay, and we're entering in, what we call our best practices portion of the presentation, and we have several of those to share with you. Number one, best practice using the platform, and this is with any third-party tool where you're going to send email marketing messages, is what we call, or what the industry calls, domain verification. Okay, and what that means in a nutshell, I just wanted to kind of give you a visualization here, is that when the emails go out of our system and our third-party email delivery provider, they look like they come from you. And so I gave a couple of examples here, from the recipient standpoint and from our standpoint. When we send something out of Continuum, we want it to be the email, we want it to be nice and clean. And we want it to say, what sales counselor sent the email. And if your domain has been verified, okay, and set up correctly, then it will look like this. If not, we're not preventing you from sending emails. You can still send emails out of the system, but technically, and for deliverability purposes, we have to do this kind of funny little, to us, on behalf of. So, in this scenario, support at Continuum CRM wanted to send me an email, but they're not a valid sender. So it has to look like it comes from behalf of the Continuum platform. And so if I'm receiving this email, that's obviously not as attractive, but beyond that, it's a technical problem for deliverability, okay? The many systems or many email clients or services see this kind of information come across, and that sometimes is flagged as an invalid email or potential spam. Okay, so we really want, if you're going to use the platform, we really want you to be verified so that the emails technically are going to have the best chance they can have to reach their their recipients, and that they also look nice, right, to the recipient. Looks like it comes from you. Okay, so that's number one best practice. Next, our next two topics that we're going to talk about are linked. So we're kind of highlighting them as in this different platform. One, we want to use signature templates. So just like you have templates or email templates, signature templates set up for Outlook or Gmail, we also want to have those set up inside of Continuum, because when it comes out of Continuum, many times, especially in the one-off scenario, we want it to look as personal and as human created as possible. And we all put our signatures and things in the footer of our email. And we can brand it, we can have your logo in place. And one of the great things that we can do is we can personalize, we're kind of personalized in this footer, in this email signature. And so that's another kind of important understanding of how the email template or email sending system works, is we can send emails as individual users. So whoever's logged in, they send an email to a prospect, and it automatically defaults to being from them. And so in that case, we have this scenario of I'm the doer, right? So as an email administrator, if you don't want to have to create an email template for every single user in your system, then we can create a single template that will sub in the person who's logged on. So if Lynn uses this template, then it'll sub in her first name and her last name and her phone number, etc. If Mike logs in and sends an email and he uses this template, it'll use his information. And so that's what we call, if you are familiar with looking at the templates or you start to get into this, we call that the doer, okay? And then the other template in the signature world that is helpful is to have one for mass emails, okay? And that's not going to be based on who's actually creating and sending the email. We maybe want every email that gets sent to look like it comes from the counselor that the prospect is probably familiar with, right? The owner. And so I can, as a marketing resource, put together a communication that we're going to mass email out to all of our waitlist prospects. But I want each one of the person, the prospects that gets that email to know who it came from. So if they work with Lynn, I want it to look like it came from Lynn. If they work with Mike, I want it to look like it came from Mike. And so we use the personalization of pulling in the owner of the record to facilitate that. And so definitely having the signature templates, period, even if they're hard coded, is needed, right? So that you can have that standard brand and a standard look and feel. But we take it one step further, and using the personalization tags, we can really make it be more effective for the users and for whoever is administrating this system. Now, related to what we're just talking about with the person who's sending the email versus the person who has the relationship with the contact, right? The owner of the contact. We have something in the system called send from owner. So if you're using our email platform and you're sending mass emails, you don't always want to just send it from, sales at yourseniorliving.com or marketing at yourseniorliving.com. We many times we do want it to look like it comes from that contact owner. And so when you're setting up emails in the system, we have a checkbox there for selecting send from owner. I think this is, again, it's twofold. The deliverability on emails, especially when they come from a real person's email address versus info at or sales at, deliverability goes up when it comes from, Lynn at yourseniorliving.com. And it also, when the contact receives it, their reception of that email and their response to it goes up because it comes from a person that they're familiar with or they've heard from before. Okay, so in the world of sending, the mass emails or mass communications out to our prospects, you really want to utilize this send from owner function. Okay. Now, this is one that I think is heavily overlooked inside the system. So we already talked about how we get statistics out of Continuum for all the emails that we send. But one of the things that we forget to do is follow up on, who maybe didn't receive our emails, who bounced, and maybe who unsubscribed from us, right? And we can go and look at every individual email if we want, and we can see who bounced and all that good stuff. But what we really want to do is on some frequency, and it really is probably related to how often you're sending emails out of the Continuum system, but you want to go utilize that recipient issues area. So if I'm sending emails out every day, then I think at least weekly, we want to go in and review the excluded list. And excluded basically means bounced, okay, for whatever reason. And we give you that list of folks and the date they bounced and why. And you can go in and you can correct their email address and you can clear it. You can reset it. Okay, because what happens is if they show up on this excluded list, whoops, didn't mean to do that. If they show up in this excluded list, the system will not send them any further emails. Okay, so even if you're able to somehow select them through one of the workflows, at the end of the day, when the email goes out of our system, we're going to go, no, they're already bounced, so we're not going to continue to send them more emails that will bounce, because this will hurt your reputation in the world of email deliverability. Okay, so we're trying to make sure that we don't do things that will prevent other good emails from getting to people. But you can come into this excluded list, you can look down the list, you can contact, you've got a click through that goes directly to the contact. You can give them a call. If you recognize a typo, you can correct the typo and then clear them with that little green icon that we've highlighted there. Put a note in and reset it, okay, and that gets logged. So that's very important, to review that list on an ongoing basis. Now we also have the unsubscribed area, which is folks who have opted out. And there's they get a chance to put a reason in. So you can see when they opted out, and they can say, not on this list. A lot of people say, didn't request this information. And sometimes people get confused, right? They get so bombarded with emails, especially I think in this time, because everybody has gone to some form of digital communication. You really want to keep an eye on that unsubscribe list, because somebody may have accidentally unsubscribed for you because they were already overwhelmed with the emails they were getting from everywhere. And we don't want to lose communication or touch with those prospects. So just keep in mind, if one of your recipients or your contacts shows up in these two lists, our platform is going to prevent them from getting any further messages. Okay. All right. Okay, so those were a few best practices. I think if I, sat for another 30 minutes, I could probably come up with a whole nother set of best practices, and we may actually do that to get that out to folks. But we wanted to go into a few topics that, from a configuration standpoint, that you may not have thought about or began to utilize just yet. And a couple of these are really simple things, but they can make a real difference in what you are sending out to the folks on your recipient list. And if you'll notice, a lot of what we're covering here revolves around template creation. Okay, it's not that you can't do some of these like in a one-off email body, but all of these kind of practices or these configuration items, they're really useful if you'll go ahead and create those templates so that they can just be selected, and then utilized in an efficient manner. So we have the ability, and we're just calling it embedding tags. And so we have the ability to create personalized emails so that when, the email goes out to your contact, it says, Dear Lynn, Dear John, Dear Jane, right? So we're subbing in their first name or information that we know about them. And so one of the things that you can do in your email bodies is you can pull in any field that's available to you. And typically we're talking about a prospect or a contact record. And so I might want to pull in, you know, the community that they showed interest in, or maybe I want to reference the line of service that they're looking into, right? And we can embed all of that into the body of the email, but we can also put it in the subject line. So, instead of just getting an email from your senior living and, there are 10 communities, I could get an email from, your senior living in Duluth, Georgia, or I could highlight, memory care services at your senior living in Duluth, Georgia, and that can be embedded in the subject line as well. Okay, and so a lot of times the way people have their viewers set up, that's what they see first, and they make decisions off of that subject line as to whether they're going to look any further or not, right? So this is another way, right, to get the personalization elevated, to the recipient in front of their, in their email client. Okay, so this is a good one, and I'll hop into the to a live example so that I can walk you through this, because there's a couple of moving parts. But and I called it footer, but I mean, I guess these could be anywhere in an email body. But again, when we're setting up our email templates, sometimes we're not just putting in website addresses, right? In our footers, a lot of times we might actually have our email addresses, or we might have our physical address. And we can actually create links that will launch, a user's email client, a recipient's email client, or launch Google Maps, for them, and automatically give you directions, to your community property. So I wanted to walk through and show you how you can do this, because again, these are actionable links and they'll get tracked in the statistics if they decide to, select any of these. So let me pull up, I've got a couple of different displays here. Let me pull up this example, very clear, example signature with different formatting. Okay, so you can see here, and then this is, again, just the signature part. This is something that a counselor might select, and they might fill in their own set of information there on the body, so that they can personalize just the text that they're sending out. And so if we look right here at the email address, I'm going to highlight it. You can see it's linked. And I also wanted to point out, so this is a little just on the link management. So this is just like Word or Outlook. So if I want to just take this link off, I can. Okay, that's fine. But whatever I want to create a link on, I can highlight. And I'm actually going to copy that text. And so this is even, think about, this is kind of twofold advanced. I'm setting up this template that's going to pull in the owner information, and I want to set up the link so that when a recipient clicks on it, it launches their email client, not a browser, right? Well, I'm looking here and I'm not seeing a lot except URL. If you'll click through to all properties, now I have a couple of different choices. I can actually go to the email here, and I can put in just what you were seeing behind here, contact owner email address. Now, if this was a hard-coded signature, it could be lit@continuumcrm.com, etc. And you could even pre-fill the subject. So when it launches their email client, you could say, requesting info from your senior living, right? So you could actually make it, fill in their subject line or not. Maybe that's a little much. But this is how we can format that so that if a recipient actually clicked on it, it'll launch their email client, okay? And then, I have the website address in here, which that's just a simple link. If I want to check the link, I can hit my little link icon. Okay, that looks fine, no problem. If I want to unlink it, I can unlink it. And then here, similarly, this is just a URL, but all this entails is you going to Google Maps and, getting the Google Map link for your property or your location, and then creating that link. Whoops, let me see. There we go, maps.google.com. I highlighted too much, it's two different rows. But all you've got to do is go get that link for your property and paste in the Google Map link, and that's what it's going to launch. And then finally, I wanted to show you that, social media links aren't new information, but you can put in the icons for Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, whatever social media you're using, and we can also link those. So facebook.com, Continuum CRM, right? So any item in here can be linked. It's just going through and attaching the appropriate link to it. Probably the most unique thing that we looked at here is leveraging this email hyperlink manager. If you go on into the properties area, that's not obvious on how to get to that. Okay. So a little bit of an advanced configuration item that you may not have realized was there, kind of hiding from us. And then one other configuration piece that you can utilize is leveraging your email templates with your web capture forms. So all of our clients utilize web capture to get their leads or their inquiries into Continuum CRM. That's definitely not anything new. So they fill out a contact us form, they come into the system, and we've set up autoresponders to send a response back to that person so that they know that their request was received and that someone's going to follow up with them soon. What folks may not realize is that you can have different email templates per type of web capture. And per type of web capture, I mean, you might have a contact us form. Then you might have a sign up for an event form. Maybe you've got a request a tour form. And we can set up a different capture definition for each one of those and tie a different template to it. And what I'm showing you here in this example is an environment where they have, a contact us. They've got an employment vendor form where people can send information in, like they're looking for employment or they're looking to be a vendor. And we've set up different responders to go out to each one of those types of requests. And we embed it and tag it, and the message can be different. It can utilize different attachments. By doing it this way, we can also assign different owners. So, if you're kind of stymied, not sure how to handle, employment and volunteer requests, you don't really have anywhere to send those, we can set up a capture form that pulls them into the system, sends out the correct notification to the correct owner, and it can kind of function outside of your sales process. So anyway, this gives you another layer of configuration and customization that will make your messaging more meaningful, right, to the recipient or the person getting those messages. Okay. All right, so there are a couple of ways that we have customers that are using the email marketing module a little differently. We didn't necessarily plan for it to be used that way, but it obviously can be, and it's useful for them. One of the things is leveraging the distribution lists in the system to send internal communications, right? So static distribution lists, when we're talking about communicating with prospects, doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Because we always want the latest, greatest, up-to-date system information. We don't want to have to maintain a separate list. But when we're talking about sending information to our users or even externally outside the system, then maintaining a static list probably makes sense, because I still will have to maintain it on some frequency, but it'll be a longer time frame. I mean, it's probably not anything I have to do weekly. Maybe once a month I update my internal distribution list. But basically what that requires is that you set up any address, any email address that you want to be able to email, whether it be a user or someone external to Continuum. You set them up as a contact. And typically we say the administrator is a good person to own that contact, or you might even tie them all to a kind of a dummy referral partner account. It could be, internal distribution for your senior living. And then we can create this distribution list that's easy to pull, and now I can send email communications to internally to folks using this platform, and you're getting all the tracking, right? So I get to leverage all the tracking that's built into it. So for anyone who's trying to send information to external interests, that need information about, sales and marketing, or if you've got a large user list, this can be really helpful and save you some time on that. Okay, then one way, and I think We saw this really increase during the early COVID time periods when people were scrambling, trying to figure out how they were going to communicate to prospects and contacts effectively, was using the responses to email communications, particularly mass ones, to figure out who needed to be contacted, right? Who needed to be followed up with first. And a couple of our communities would send out information that was important for the prospects to receive, and they would then look at the click response. Particularly the click response. Open rates can be a little iffy, but the click response, we can count on that because somebody took action on a link that was in our email. And they used these to prioritize who needed to be followed up with in a, excuse me, who needed to be followed up in a priority fashion, right? So I can click straight through to the prospect and I can execute an activity if I'm going to call them out immediately, or if I'm going to send another email out, or I can schedule up a future activity that I want to, be sure and act on. And, I'm showing, they were using this as prioritizing off of click response, but we also might utilize this to respond off of bounces too, right? So if I thought I had a clean list and all of a sudden I have 3 or 4 bounces, then I can use this as another, reach out point or touch point. So again, it goes back to utilizing the information that is being kind of delivered back out off of those emails to either enhance the communications with your prospects or evaluate, what you are sending out to help develop those messages. Okay, so now probably is the most fun part for you guys and for me is to talk about some new feature release inside the system. And this particular feature is already available. We've already launched it out there. And if you're using the event module in the system, then this is something that you have access today. So basically inside of our event area, you were able to link contacts in to show, if they had RSVP'd or if they attended or no-showed, etc. And in order to print that list or send an email to that list, we had to create a report, right? So for every event, you pretty much had to have a report in place. Well, now you just have a list of the contacts right on the event tab. You can still build the report. So if there's something custom that you want to produce and pull fields in, you can do that. But for purposes of, looking at the contacts linked to the event, seeing what their statuses are or changing them, sending out emails, I can do that all from the event tab now. So let me pull up another kind of live scenario here for that. Excuse me. Okay. So I'm going to use this event, the Open House 8.3, and that's actually where the screenshot comes from. So when I click on the event name, you'll notice there's a new contacts tab all the way to the right. Okay, and it pulls in a standard set of information here so that we can see who is on the event. And right now I have it grouped and filtered. So this is, again, very similar to how you use any of our list pages inside the system. And right now I'm grouped on member status. So I have all my attended folks at the top. I have my canceled in the middle and my no-shows at the bottom. Okay, so I can now dump this, to Excel or CSV. I can click straight through to the actual record. I can also change. I can go, oh, you know what? Janice actually didn't attend. That got tagged wrong. She was a no-show, and I can save that. So I can change their statuses right from here. Let me reload that. And so now Janice is a no-show in the list. Okay, so, and again, if you remember from before, we had to go to every individual contact record and change those statuses. It was just a little cumbersome. So now I can do all that right within this contacts tab. And now I can use the email contacts function to email these folks. And so one of the great things from here is, let's say I just want to send an email to the folks who attended. So I filtered on my status and got it down to 10. Now when I click email contacts, it's just going to be those 10, and you'll have to ignore my my environment here. This is a kind of a test area, but I can quickly queue up a follow-up to my attendees. I can, and whatever status it is that you use, I can send an email to my cancellations. I can send a different email to my no-shows, and I can do it very quickly, right? All from one place. Okay, so again, if you're using the events module, if you'll go to those now after this session, you'll see this contacts tab available in your account. Okay. All right, and then our next, and this is our final slide here, is a new feature that we're releasing that gives you accessibility to the attached documents. So we're all familiar with our document library. That's where we put general documents, collateral, marketing material, et cetera, that you might want to utilize, and we can utilize those on any email body that we are putting together. But now we've made it available so that you can actually leverage the attached documents on a prospect record or a contact record, whatever that might be. So on a prospect record, right, we might attach our resident agreements, you might be doing assessments, there may be signing off on different types of forms for move-in, et cetera. Any images, photos, whatever that might be. And we can now use those on our emails. So if I want to email back out a signed resident agreement that's attached to the prospect, I can do that now. I have access to it. Before, you had to have it on your computer and you had to upload it, etc. But now we're giving you access to the attached documents area. And so what this screenshot is showing you is from a prospect record, I launch into an email, I hit the attachments button, and now the attached docs area gives me a filtered list of all the attachments so that I can pick from those. Okay, so let me go and pull that up in a live walkthrough here. Let me figure out which one am I. Here we go. So I'm going to pull up my Lynn Madeira prospect here. Okay, and you'll see I have a number of Madeira contacts on this prospect, and I have uploaded a number of attachments. Okay, and I want to actually email Lynn and maybe all of her adult children, and I want to include the attachments there. And so what you'll see is in the interface, when I actually launch an email from a particular prospect record, those are the contacts I'm interested in. There's no need to search for anything else. I have a list of those. I can email them. I pick my recipients, and now I can go in and I can pick my, the template that I want to use. But the main thing here is that I can now go to the attachments and I can say, okay, include that evaluation form, include this year in review, and then up in general documents, let's pull something out of the general documents area. Like I want to include that leading age piece, and I can attach all those. So again, this was just trying to make this area more efficient for all the users so that you're going to all the trouble to attach all those resident agreements and the information pertinent to a prospect. Now you'll be able to utilize it in your communications outside the system. All right, and then finally, I wanted to highlight, because this wasn't a training session, so to speak. This was more, trying to highlight feature function and application. We do have the learning resources available to you in the Learning Center. Everybody has access to the video training, and there's an entire course on email marketing, and it talks about, setting up email templates and maneuvering through, that module. And then we also have a dedicated knowledge-based topic where if you like to consume things more written and screenshot based, then you can do that as well. Um, and if you're in the knowledge base, you can also submit a ticket to support, at that same time. So there are, resources available to you, to help introduce more of the mechanics, right, of using the system. And then that was it. So I think most people probably have my contact info, which you're more than welcome to use. But we also, at the end of this session, you're going to be presented with, I think it's a 5-question poll. And it's really about, what times would work better for you? What other topics would you like to hear? And then finally, if you're not utilizing email marketing or email marketing to its fullest, what do you feel like it is that you need help with, right? Like, what could we do to help, get you moving or get you going in that area? So that's it for me. I will kind of check my Q&A and my chat panels now and see if there's any questions I can answer.